subject's heavy, I don't get it. How come I haven't hit it already? Still working, I'm still learning, I'm still searching, finally earning something, finally turning something called a profit. If I hear you talking, don't get caught in it. I'll be popping off and hit ya, dropping out. Yeah, I promise.
I think that if you're not getting criticised, chances are you stand for nothing and you're not making an impact. I think first, you're not the first that has gone through it, and you won't be the last. I think if people know where to look for the answers or inspiration, they can find it.
There's no point having a big dream or vision if you can't build it. So eye on the prize. You should always have your presence noticed when you're in a room. So not necessarily by being the loudest person to scream or shout or, being verbal about it, but it's about being noticed through your presence, your smell, how you carry yourself, how you interact with people, how you do business with people.
I was imposing a limitation, but when actually, in a different mindset, going through some pain at the time, giving it a go, it's amazing what people can achieve if they set their mind to it and turn up and just give it a go.
I never give up. I got this, man, I got it. I will rock when I'm on it. Never profit. Got the block lit, I'm toxic. Spitting logic, make them nauseous. Honest, can I stop this? Never cautious, drop it. I'm the hardest. Knock, knock, watch it. I'm the king of rock. Profit, spitting hot. I'm topic, chronic. I think I'm lost it.
Welcome to another episode of the $1 Million Branders podcast. Today we are blessed with an incredible guest who I had the honor of hearing speak at an October 7th Remembrance Day. And what really struck me about Colonel Michael Scott is that he had the ability to just stand up strong for what he believed in. And it's not about being wrong or right. It's about standing strong in your values and who you are as a person. So Colonel Michael Scott, it's an honor to have you on the show today, and thank you for making time for us. I know this episode is going to be absolute fire. There's so much that so many people globally are going to learn from you, and welcome to the show.
Justine, it's wonderful to be here with you.
And your energy is just infectious. I mean, not just in terms of your discipline, but the way you inspire others through what you do. Tell us a little bit about your foundation, because I know that you are CEO, you have done incredible things and are doing incredible things globally. You're also studying. So I really want to hear more about that. And for our guests who don't know you, but they should, please give us a little bit of background.
Thanks, Justine. Colonel Michael Scott, I'm at a hinge period in my career. The first half of my professional career was 30 years in the Australian Army. I rose to the rank of colonel, very fortunate to serve in East Timor, Bougainville, Iraq, 2 tours of Afghanistan. And from July 2019 to September 2021, I was seconded to the United Nations in an unarmed military peacekeeping mission in Jerusalem, and I was responsible for 153 military observers drawn from 27 different troop contributing countries, including non-traditional partners from an Australian perspective like Russia and China, and we operated in the Levant. I had team members in Israel, up in Lebanon, in Syria, in Jordan, and in Egypt. And what brought me to meet the very humble but amazing Justine was a connection with Israel. My wife and I were residents in Jerusalem for over 2 years. I had opportunity to travel extensively, including to the south, some of the towns that were massacred on October 7, 2023, a deep personal connection with Israelis and with the state of Israel, and that led me to meet you last month at the October 7 commemoration, the community event in Vaucluse in Sydney, where I was very fortunate to address the crowd.
And I know you speak of being humble, Michael, but to be honest, the things that you have done in your life, I mean, we've discussed that I come from a bodybuilding background. However, you can't even, the juxtaposition of where you've been and the things that you've done, you speak about humble, you've had an incredible life. You are such a giver to, I'm going to say, humanity. And thank you also for your service, not just to our country, but on a global scale. and just with the people that you meet every day. But I want to dive in a little bit into your career. So you mentioned, Colonel, 30 years in the Army, like rewind back to the days. How old were you? 17?
Yeah, at 17 in Brisbane, I just completed Brisbane Grammar School, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my career. And so it was actually my mother who provided me some advice that maybe I consider the Army for a couple of years until I figured certain things out. I joined the Australian Army as a Ready Reserve soldier in 1994. I turned 18 during recruit training that year, found that I really loved the profession of arms. I really loved the institution of the Australian Army, and applied and was accepted to serve as a regular soldier. The aspiration was always to commission, and so I applied for and won a position into the Royal Military College Duntroon, 1996, 1997, Duntroon graduate, and then joined the Royal Australian Armoured Corps. And so some of my early regimental experience was in the 2nd Cavalry Regiment and the 1st Armoured Regiment up in Darwin, and it's in that capacity that I've deployed several times overseas. I don't consider myself special in any way. Like I think all of us, we just give it our best, and that's success enough.
It's amazing. And you mentioned, raising, being a colonel. How did that happen? Because 30 years, it seems like a short time. As we get older, I feel like the time gets shorter. However, how did that eventuate?
Look, you sort of blink and you're an adult,
yes.
aren't you? I'm doing an MBA at the moment, which is the transition point from what was into what will be.
Incredible.
And quite a few of the course members on my program are in their 20s, and so I remember thinking... I
thought you were only 25 though, so...
You're very kind. But look, I've had fun. A career is one profession, but many different jobs. It certainly hasn't all been smooth sailing, but on reflection on my first career, I think some of the most difficult moments are where you actually learn the most about yourself.
Yes,
it's in adversity, I think, that character can only ever be measured. And for those young readers that are listeners that are bumping into the first life challenges, we've all been there. Churchill's quote is that success is advancing from disaster to disaster without a loss of enthusiasm. And so for those difficult moments, stand back up, keep walking forward to the objective. And it's amazing what a little bit of staying power can achieve.
And that, you mentioned there was a hard moment for you when we spoke prior to this interview where you took on the role of, was it stepping in for another officer when you got your position, or that little, I'd love to speak about that story.
Yeah, so that's the role of the acting head of military in the United Nations Truth Supervision Organisation. So I was a newly promoted colonel in early 2019, deployed into the United Nations Truth Supervision Organisation as the military deputy under a Norwegian Major General. But after 3 months, that officer hit end of mission, went home, and based on some challenges in the organisation, her successor was frozen. And for the next 2 years, I acted higher duties in the absence of the Major General. But reflecting on, I think, my methodology and my heuristics over many decades, I've always tried to work really hard and apply myself in steady state, because some of the early operational experience, when you're facing leadership and command decisions that literally, not just metaphorically, can mean life and death, something that I've been very conscious of is not having an unnecessary death on my conscience based on things that I could have positively influenced. And a guiding heuristic for me is that on a horns of a dilemma, I'll do what in time I regret less. And what that has actually looked like is a lot of wide reading, identifying my strengths and trying to sustain them, but more particularly individual weaknesses and slowly and incrementally working to resolve them. And that put me in a position that where my country and my mission asked something difficult of me, I'd like to think that I didn't hash it up. And I think that's a really good life skill that I'd encourage
100%.
people to not only appreciate but also apply.
And there were so many incredible points that you just touched on, but we have a lot of entrepreneurs, thought leaders, visionaries who listen to this podcast, who want to better themselves, but I think everyone has weaknesses. So how do you differentiate your own strengths from your weaknesses, and how do you make your weaknesses work for you?
Yeah, I think if you can check your ego at the door, is a good start. And so human beings, whether they're mentors or family members or even critics, are very quick to bring weaknesses that they detect to the attention of the owner. And so my philosophy is that unless you're moving forward, unless you're improving yourself in a dynamic environment, you may be going backwards in real terms. And so it's a process that is all relative. It never stops. Once you've turned a previous weakness into a mitigated matter or indeed a strength, you need to do the appreciation again. And I've always tried to surround myself with a series of mentors that I can learn from. Mostly are informal, where I see people that have a particular trait or behaviour that I admire. That becomes my minimum standard. And
I love that.
And when you bump into a lot of people, it becomes quite significant. But when you're in an important role, whether it be in the profession of arms or even in business, and you're responsible as a manager or a leader, I think a good position is that you owe it to them to be your best day in, day out, in steady state. You're a bodybuilder. A different part of my career, I did Ironman triathlon.
It's amazing.
And
my biggest is city to surf.
That's
And
impressive.
that's where it
that's
stays.
a start. Well, you're a lot younger than me.
I'm a lightweight.
But it's a matter of just getting after it a bite at a time. Some of the challenges that we're facing, it can't be taken head on and solved by next Saturday. It's a matter of planning and appreciating, and then incrementally working through to a resolution.
Absolutely.
And once you've solved that challenge, or you've embraced that opportunity, have a bit of a break, but then get after the next set of challenges.
I love it. And I do feel like your military background, I mean, when I speak to you, you're very methodical, even how you think about certain things, your organization, the MBA. I mean, you're just going to kill it in the business world. I know that. It's just your whole entire background and your life. I mean, anyone who gets to work with you, I will say this on camera, remember what this man does. It's a huge legacy. However, we have spoken about being your best self. Yeah. And I love how you always just say, get after it. Like, I listened to some video that said, if Monday goes bad, you still got Tuesday.
That's it.
But let's talk about being your best self and showing up, because I'm sure there are many moments in your life that you did not feel strong, or you didn't want to show up. And showing up as your best self, I think, is an art in itself. Yeah. So I would love to speak to you about how you go through day to day and make this happen.
I think right from the outset, perfection doesn't exist in nature, and so there's no person that is perfect. There's no person that can be on always. Even professional athletes, they need to go through the build, the taper, the high performance, the recovery before the next event. And so I see sinusoidal patterns in human behaviour, a number of the human challenges that we're facing. And so if you can just understand that you won't always be on, and indeed you can't be, because you'll go pop at an unexpected and inopportune moment. Work through your coping strategies. I've had a number of responsibilities, including in war, but I'm not I'm not too arrogant to admit that in quiet times where I've been by myself, I've been incredibly vulnerable, and that's included, releasing emotions through tears. That's I think a natural part of.
I love that you're addressing that.
Of masculinity.
Yes, I think so too.
There's people that I've served with that I've lost. I choose not to become a blubbering mess in a public-facing event, but I think anyone that does not have the coping strategies of a release in private is either one, a sociopath, or two, a liar. And so, again, for those people that are listening to your podcast and setting out and setting big goals and working incrementally to achieve them, it's not about being perfect. It's about giving your best, identifying your strengths, maintaining them, thinking through what your weaknesses may be, listening to those whose opinions you trust, and incrementally getting after them, because that, I think, is some of the building blocks in time to success.
And I love that you're mentioning perfectionism, because I am a recovering perfectionist. I'm not afraid to admit it. For everyone watching this, you know me. And I actually heard a really nice quote that said, you can either remember how people lived when they've passed, or you can remember how they died. So I think that's really important. I mean, life, I think these days, I think after COVID, it became more realistic that people should put things in perspective and find light even in the darkness. But what I really admire about you is that you are very strong in your own beliefs, whether it's in, through your background or standing up for what you believe in. And without getting political, I think that it is an amazing trait to have in the world that we're living in, just to be able to stand strong. Because I think, and same with branding and business, I speak a lot about branding and business, but if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing.
That's right.
So I'd love to speak about that with you, because I think that the only thing we can control is our own mindset and how we operate in the world. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think those that appear to stand for everything and want to please everyone actually stand for nothing. I have heuristics and values and behaviours that guide a lot of my actions, ethics, morals, a sense of integrity. And as it relates specifically to my work now, non-Jewish, but have made the decision to stand up and not be a bystander against the scourge that is anti-Semitism. Deep personal connection from my time over in Israel. A dear friend of mine, his adopted son is still a hostage in Gaza, so very personal for me. There's a number of other dear friends that were directly impacted by what Hamas perpetuated on October 7, and we look from a Sydney perspective, that reprehensible display at our Opera House on the 9th of October 2023. It was about that stage that I spoke with my wife and said, look, I'm not going to be a bystander to this, because I think for those that look backwards in history, you're born with, you develop the ability of foresight, because you can identify patterns in what has happened in the past.
Absolutely.
And pick them up in the current and make a judgment on what may happen going forward. And so, yeah, look, I'm but one voice, but again, something I've learnt from my first career in the profession of arms is that there's an internal and an external locus of control. There's far more that we can't control than what we can. But if you understand where your values are and what you stand for, and you incrementally point in that direction and give it your all,
yes,
even if you fail, you're not haunted with regret.
Totally.
And so, yeah, I subscribe to the view that bad things will only happen if good people choose not to act. And for me, I won't be a bystander.
Well, thank you for being strong in this crazy world. And I think the point that I want to really get across to our viewers is, I think it's really important to be a good person. And in whatever terms certain behaviors are not okay. And it is very important to stand strong in your beliefs. Doesn't matter your race, your religion, your authentic, you know, where you're from, what country you live in. It's just a matter of being a good person, and you are that. And thank you for everything that you're doing just to have a voice. But let's talk about transformation through adversity, because I know you've had a lot of this in your life. But many say transformation comes from adversity. I'm a strong believer in this, and I believe that out of every disadvantage is born an advantage. But can you share a pivotal moment in your career that helped shift your perspective or pushed you to become the leader you are today?
Oh, gee, constant. I think I was fortunate that there's been a number of great role models in my family. Grandparents, mum and dad, friends right from the outset. After I joined the military, people that I admired and looked up to, some that provided a demonstration of what not to do, and indeed you can embrace things out of really bad examples as well that you can adapt to your toolbox as a leader, as a parent going forward. I think operations is where the stakes of not only being a professional soldier, but indeed a citizen in a democracy such as ours. It's where you see where service actually counts, and so I think my operational service in East Timor, that was the first time I smelled dead human beings, burning human beings. They're smells that don't leave you. Iraq and Afghanistan, wow. Working with indigenous elements, Iraqi army translators. My first tour of Afghanistan, I was a mentor for a Kandak or a battalion commander of the 4th Kandak. Working very close with partner forces, having soldiers that I was close to, that I was responsible for, that lost their lives, including a couple in my Unit 1 who served under my command just before he was murdered in a green on blue attack by a rogue Taliban that masqueraded as Afghan National Army. I think all of those experiences and understanding strategy, operations, tactics in the profession of arms, previous campaigns, that it really fills your toolbox that you can adapt into other careers. Something that I've really noticed studying at the Graduate School of Management, doing my MBA, I was very fortunate to be selected for a veteran scholarship, a Wandering Warriors scholarship. Something I've seen is that there's so many transferable skills from the profession of arms into the business context, and something I'd pass to any employers of veterans, future tense, is that my look at military veterans or people that have served not only in the Australian military but indeed any military, they're not disabled, they're super abled, because they've got a series of skills that are transferable.
Yes,
they may lack confidence, because one of the things about the profession of arms is that it's a really tight bond, and some veterans lose the left and right of arc. They lose their moorings when they come out of quite a structured environment. Yes. But again, just talking to those employers out there, either current or future, certainly give veterans a go, because in my view they're super abled and they will be an incredible asset to your institution.
Definitely, it's total attitude too. I mean, I work with a couple of logistics companies, as you know, in the US, and they next level. It's like the real Top Gun. when you work with them.
I had an interesting conversation actually with a fellow named Mal just yesterday, actually, and he was telling me a story about a buddy of his that was very high up in a HR department, and this buddy said that as soon as he saw a resume of a veteran,
he would grab him.
It would
push
the
him
opposite.
away.
It would immediately go to the bottom of the
Wow.
pile, because his erroneous view was that the veteran would have a really
Crazy.
narrow perspective, and so when he spoke with this very senior person, Mal, who was across his brief, he was a senior executive, has been responsible for thousands of people and incredible
Yes.
responsibilities. The breadth of his knowledge and the way he could hold a conversation really changed this HR professional's views, and so I think again. We all need to test our preconceived ideas.
Absolutely, in everything.
Growth
Agreed.
is something that we all have the potential to achieve if we can sort
Definitely.
of check some of our baggage at the door from time to time.
So, question for you. I mean, let's speak about growth, because I think every level of your life, of your business, will demand a different version of you.
Yep.
So how do you manage your growth? And for the entrepreneurs who are a little bit lost, so it's basically growth, values, being your best self, but how do they find their value system, what works for them in terms of growth, based on what are some of the best lessons you've learned for yourself?
Yeah, good question. One, keep showing up, and so there's the imposter syndrome. Some of the most successful people in society,
Yes.
biographies I've read, autobiographies, they talk about imposter syndrome, and indeed
It's real.
I read a really interesting account of a professional sportswoman. I can't remember now which pursuit. It might have been swimming or something, and this lady was the world record holder in the history of that sport. No one had done it better than her. But the devil on her left shoulder used to say that she was too fat or too stupid, and she couldn't achieve anything. She was the world record holder.
Unreal.
But she had that adverse inner monologue, and so I think that's all perfectly normal. Something that I talk to my daughter, who's now 19, about is that, sweetie, we're in charge of our feelings. Our feelings aren't in charge of us.
Love it.
And I think that if you can dispute those adverse inner voices and just say, look, okay, I take your point, but objectively that's not the case. It's not madness to have a conversation with your inner monologue. In my view, it's actually
I talk to myself every day.
it's positive self-talk.
Yes.
But I think personally, when I've faced some difficulties, and I've confided in you a difficult moment about a decade ago. I won't go into details here, but my conclusion was that I'd live my ideal self. And so
Love that. So
at a
good.
difficult time where I felt a bit like a helium balloon, a windstorm, it was like the laws of physics that I knew for a decade
Yes.
had broken down. But I thought little things that I could control were good food hygiene, good exercise hygiene, and with good eating and exercise, it helped with sleep. And if you can sleep, everything else is surmountable in my view. At that time, I didn't use any alcohol. I put myself on the dry, and I actually went into distance running, got injured, and then before my first competitive marathon, but then fell into the sport of triathlon. And so in that period, I'd completed a number of halves, 6 full Ironmans, and my last event in
Unbelievable.
Israel was an ultra. And so I think it's really amazing what a person can achieve if they set their mind to it. And my personal story, before I actually had the self-confidence and belief that I could actually develop a training mindset and incrementally get to the level of fitness to do an Ironman triathlon, I saw someone else that did them, and I thought, I can never do that. It was adverse negative self-talk, and I was imposing a limitation. But when I actually, in a different mindset, going through some pain at the time, giving it a go, it's amazing what people can achieve if they set their mind to it and turn up and just give it a go.
I love that.
Not getting stopped at the first hurdle,
Yes.
but getting across it and keep moving forward.
Definitely. And I think I'm going to just be real, but I know all you Aussies listening to this, the high achievers especially, I think there is tall poppy syndrome, which means that you can't grow a little bit higher than the rest of the poppies or flowers in the field. What is your advice for people who are going through that, whether it's in life, business, because I think the thing is with you, you're so grounded and you're very determined and you go for your goals. And a lot of high achievers, we're very hard on ourselves, but I believe sometimes it's about blocking out the noise. How would you counteract that if people listening to this are going through that?
I think first, you're not the first that has gone through it, and you won't be the last. I think if people know where to look for the answers or inspiration, they can find it and it'll help. Maya Angelou's poem "And Still I Rise" is great. Invictus.
Love it.
Rudyard Kipling's "If." There's so many great examples out there. Teddy Roosevelt's speech, the man in the arena. It's not the critic that counts. Churchill's ruminations I've found inspiration in quite a few times. I think that if you're not getting criticised, chances are you stand for nothing and you're not making an impact. And it's almost because you're getting criticised, you're on the path that you need to be and you're actually getting traction. So, yeah, I think it's a matter for the individual to grow as a person. Not the first, won't be the last. I've not only experienced that personally, but as a parent of a couple of kids and some wonderful little people from my wife's first marriage, all of whom I think are wonderful. We help one another and just maintaining a positive mindset, understanding those people that you can actually rely on, not to put more weight on your shoulders in adversity, but where you find certain people that'll help. Hey, Justine, you look like there's a bit on you at the moment. Let me help take some weight off your shoulders.
Yes.
Not to put it in my backpack, but let me help. We'll put it on the ground and then we'll both step over it and forward into a better tomorrow.
And I mean, especially me, I'm a total culprit of this, but I'm not good at asking for things. So for those people who are bad like me at doing that, what's the best way to go about that? Because it can be in business and life, right? We all have that backpack on our back, but asking for the help, especially when you're a high achiever, can be difficult.
Are you a Douglas Adams fan?
I am.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Yeah.
Do you remember what rule number 1 is?
Please tell them. Oh, I'm knocking over the microphone.
Don't panic. And so I think recognising a growth edge, recognising a personal growth edge, the fact that you've declared that on camera, it talks to
I'm kidding.
it talks to your strength as a person.
Thank you so
and
much.
I think if you've recognised it, that's the necessary precondition. But then think through with the support of friends and people whose opinions you trust, confide in them. I think you could listen to everyone's advice, the advice that would be beneficial, and then you make the decision on what may be best for you at a point in time. But it's rare that the challenges that we face are one and done. It's not a ballistic behaviour, fire and forget. It's incremental improvement, and then understanding where you are. Was that change positive, regressive? What's the next bound? I think with all of your skills personally that you've shown in business, perhaps write down the advice meant for you, but as though you'd be giving it to a third party.
Love it.
And so
Such good
actually
advice.
Write out a plan that's not you, and you may actually find that you've got some of the answers that would most benefit.
So advice is excellent. Thank you so much. If you are enjoying this episode, if you have gotten value from this episode and it has changed your life by teaching you things, I'm going to ask you a huge favor. If you would subscribe, like, follow, and share with people so we can bring more incredible guests to the $1 Million Branders podcast to serve you better, so you can make more money in your business, in your life, and accelerate your growth into becoming the $1 Million brand that I know is possible for you. Thank you, and my greatest appreciation to you. To our audience, we mentioned it briefly in the beginning, but Colonel Michael is heading up a foundation called the 2023 Foundation, a harm minimization charity to combat anti-Semitism. I think that this is so close to my heart, not just because I'm Jewish, but because I'm human. And I think this is so needed in this crazy world we're living in. As I said, I believe it's the most important thing in the world to stand for something and what you believe in. And this isn't about just being Jewish, right? This is for anyone experiencing anything like that throughout the world. But please, can you tell us a little bit about it, Michael?
Yeah, certainly. I think right from the outset, Justine, you're not alone. I'm not the only
Thank you so
non-Jew
much.
that gets what's going on, gets that we're living in a period of historical significance, that if we don't act better than what humanity did last century, we may see a recurrence, and that's not going to happen on my watch to the extent that I can do anything about it.
So appreciate you.
And so after 2 and a bit years living in Israel, travelling widely in the region, being directly personally impacted by the violence of Hamas's attack, and seeing the reaction of so many people across Western democracies, which is just completely unacceptable. I'm in the business of helping people understand that the prevailing narrative is so far from my lived personal experience and the facts on the ground, it's not funny. And so the origins of the 2023 Foundation were born out of some failed attempts to move the needle with people that I knew in Australia. One fella in particular that I went to school with, Brisbane Grammar School, 30 years ago, was posting some quite anti-Semitic material on social media. I messaged him, "Hey mate, we've known each other a while. Do you mind if I saw your post? Do you mind if we have a chat?" I lived over there for a couple of years while serving with the UN. That's not my experience.
Oh.
And I just got yelled at and cancelled. And I thought, well, that's not working. I tried with some people in the workplace as well in late 2023. That resulted in a poor outcome as well. And so I actually stepped back and I thought, well, I need to plan this a little better. And I read a lot. I read a book, a biography on Harry S. Truman, Cyrus, and came across the example of the Fulbright Scholarship, which Senator J. William Fulbright established at the end of the Second World War. And fast forward 80 years on, it's bringing about 6,000 people into primarily US institutions, not only to educate, but build cross-cultural linkages. And I thought that's an exemplar that I can apply to combating anti-Semitism. A Benjamin Franklin quote that I read in a different biography at a similar time, "Tell me I forget, teach me I may remember, but involve me I learn."
Gets shivers every time I hear that quote.
At a time where truth is being contested and AI deep fakes are very believable.
Yes.
I think that there's no substitute for bringing people across and letting them see the truth for themselves.
Absolutely.
And so there's a series of activities that the 2023 Foundation will conduct from 2025. The first activity will be a veterans activity around Anzac Day, the 25th of April.
Incredible.
Where there'll be a dawn service in the Commonwealth War Graves in Jerusalem.
Wow.
A group of veterans
So
and their partners will then have a chance to tour the old city, Yad Vashem, the Jerusalem Museum, spend some time in Tel Aviv and Yaffo, up to Haifa, meet the Druze and Mount Carmel, see the Baha'i Gardens, across to Nazareth to meet Christian, Arab Israelis, Muslim Israelis, if the security situation allows, into Bethlehem and Ramallah, to understand the nuances. If they're so wired, have a really good look for the apartheid, because I haven't seen it, because
Yes.
my lived personal experience is that there is no apartheid. Israel is the only democracy in the whole region, and it's a plural, tolerant society where free market economics, the rule of law and emancipation of women thrives. Fast forward to June, 2 months after the April inaugural activity, looking at running a similar thematic event for the Pride March in June. As a Sydney-sider and a former resident of Israel, I know that the nearest on the planet to the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras is the Pride March in Tel Aviv in June. And so that's a second thematic activity where I've got a number of dear gay and lesbian friends in Australia, a number of dear gay and lesbian friends over in Israel, a thematic visit to let them experience a part of the culture, but also to get around and see some of those other activities, to tackle head on some of the misinformation and the malice around, quiz for Palestine, chickens for KFC. Actually hear the testimony of Palestinians that would have been murdered, but for the fact that the IDF rescued them, they can live their authentic self as a gay Palestinian in Israel, the only country in the region that is so tolerant. Some of the other activities are industry placements. Israel is the startup nation, to paraphrase Dan Senor. Kibbutz placements, as well as scholarships to some of the internationally competitive tertiary schools, Kohler Management School, Technion, Reichman Institute.
Incredible.
Giving people a chance to not only develop themselves, but to understand Israel in all of its perfect imperfections.
I love it. It's so true when you say, when you said imperfect, what was it? Imperfect.
Perfect imperfections. Yeah.
I'm just thinking of, they call it a balagan in Hebrew. If you don't know what that means, it just means mess. Like people, you walk into the shuk and everyone's just shouting and throwing things, and it's such a vibe. So I'm very excited that you're doing that, because it is an experience, I think, second to none. And I've got a real love for my country. I love America too, but I'm so glad that you're doing this, and congratulations on such an incredible vision and a legacy and a mission, because it is a mission. And I think, as you said, despite whether you're Christian, Muslim, whatever it is, everyone should be able to have the opportunity to live as their authentic self in an environment. So thank you for everything that you're doing and the awareness that you're bringing to the world. Question for you though, reversing back to your army days, military days, because we've got Colonel Michael Scott, 30-year army veteran. I believe that corporate, and we spoke about this off camera, but corporate culture is basically like navigating through a battle. I had a conversation with a friend today that I could never, ever work for anyone else after running my own company again. But as you were saying, I think the juxtaposition of working in corporate versus being a colonel in the army, or even being just a regular soldier, it requires a certain level of discipline. And also, you're facing real life or death. And in corporate culture, it's like almost business death, right? So can you tell us give us your thoughts on that.
I think it's a plug for all the veterans out there, and if there's any employers listening, my personal experience is that there's a lot of crossovers, a lot of parallels.
Love it.
Something that I've loved about the profession of arms is individuals coming together as a team for a common purpose, where we focus to the extent we can on the challenges in front of us, and then depth targets. And from what I've seen with some of the mentors that have come through my MBA program, that have given a window and an insight into some of the challenges that they've faced, there's a lot of parallels, because like the military, I think the business leaders that I truly admire are those that can come together in a teaming function, where our differences give us our great strengths. And, you look at just
Love it.
some partnerships that have achieved great things that, you know, I can reflect on, you know, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, the friendship that changed the world, heuristics thinking traps. You look at, you know, Gates and Balmer, there's, you know, Munger and Buffett. There's just so many examples of different people coming together. There is a creative tension. They're probably at each other's throats from time to time, but they were strong enough in their character to check ego at the door, hash it out, pull back a bit, but come together and unite to move forward. That's something that I'm actually looking forward to as I set myself challenges in the business environment.
Yes.
In my second career. I'm certainly looking at leveraging all of the knowledge, skills, attitude, experiences, successes, failures, setbacks that I've experienced in the profession of arms for the past 30 years.
There's so much we can learn from you on so many levels. We're going to have to do another podcast because I could speak to you for many, many hours. I don't think we would be able to end this podcast.
Ditto.
But I think that you are a visionary, and how important is vision to you? And then also execution is part of vision. There's no point having a big dream or vision if you can't build it. So eye on the prize. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you do that?
Well, I think, you know, if you don't have a plan, any road will take you into tomorrow, but you may end up in a position that you're uncomfortable with. I think one of my growth edges is I'm getting better very slowly at giving a tight vision statement. One of my weaknesses is if I can happen on something tight with 5 words, I may take 1,000.
Yes.
But that again is just a recognition that we've all got growth edges and we're all a work in progress. But you know, I'm humble enough to say that I've got a lot of things that I need to work on, and I think that when I'm in my 80s, that will be the case.
I can't wait to see what you do, because if you're like this now and you still got stuff to work on, I got a lot of work to do.
Oh no, but we all do. It's about mindset and not becoming overwhelmed. Just in a sustainable pace that works given all relevant factors. Just try to be a little bit better tomorrow than we were yesterday and today. That's sort of the milestone or the goal. But back to your point on vision, you know, that's the direction you're going as opposed to in the wrong way. But then it's just a matter of velocity forward into tomorrow. And that's got a number of considerations that are unique to the individual.
Yes, exactly. And one thing I want to ask you about is gut instinct, because in your career, I think gut instinct would be a very important character trait. And people listening to this, I mean, let's face it, the world is crazy, and especially because you have so many keyboard warriors, there's AI, there's tech. And gut instinct, even when you meet people or when you encounter people, whether it's business, life, in the field, as you would have experienced, I'm sure you've got many stories about this, but how important is gut instinct, and how do you tell the difference between good and bad, and where you should be and where you shouldn't be?
It's a tough question, isn't it? Because you know, Kahneman and Tversky talk about thinking traps, heuristics. Sometimes our gut instincts lead us to the wrong answer. Personally, as a soldier, in my first career, I think there is absolutely a place for gut instinct. These are skills that have evolved over thousands of years, and you know, those hairs that stand up on the back of your neck in certain circumstances, they may actually be alerting you to a challenge or something that you need to pay attention to. But yeah, there's I think, you know, rational, irrational, and non-rational decision making. I think if people understand that not all of the decisions will be right in certain circumstances, but if they make a decision that it turns out to be ill-considered for whatever reason, a person can actually recover from a position to be stronger, you know, than where they started if they just mea culpa, a little bit of humility, individual acceptance, responsibility. I screwed up. I got that wrong. I'm sorry. I've learned from it. that for me is really quite powerful, and it's a bit away from your original question, I think, but an individual acceptance of responsibility and what Stephen Covey would refer to as the speed of trust is fundamental to me. I think that you build trust with a teaspoon, but you can destroy it with a shovel. And something I look to in the behaviour of other people is if they can't say, I made a mistake, and I'm thinking of a particular former boss who, very careerist, but he was accomplished, but he had some growth edges. And when I actually called him on something, I looked to that, you really screwed me over with that decision. It was the equivalent answer of the cat ate my homework. And I thought that I actually can't trust that person.
Yes.
Because if they didn't have the strength of character to listen to the feedback I provided, just flicked mud back into my face, I thought, no, you're done with me. The individual's actually progressed in rank, but fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. That's probably enough of an answer.
No, I love the no BS answer that you just gave. It's really important also, I think, to trust your intuition. How do you trust your intuition in life and business?
Geez, I'm going to turn that around to you, Justine. How do you trust your intuition? Don't think of the most personal challenge, but sure. Is there another challenge?
And I love that I've never had someone ask me a question back, but then you have to go after a deal. So I think for me, it's a feeling. I just feel it. Like, I am a very spiritual person, but I've learned, I think, as I've experienced certain situations like you've had with whether it be prior bosses, whether it's people, whether it's friends, I don't necessarily look at the person like, oh, you were an awful person. I look at it and go, okay, my intuition's saying this about this person, and often I'll wait for an action to show me, just how you said. And then I'll trust it based on that. So whether it's life or business or friendship or whatever it is, but it takes a certain level of strength too, to be able to go, okay, you're done in my life.
Yeah.
There's a saying actually that you should always have your presence noticed when you're in a room. So not necessarily by being the loudest person to scream or shout or, being verbal about it, but it's about being noticed through your presence, your smell, how you carry yourself, how you interact with people, how you do business with people. But I think you can tie that in with intuition. Like, for me, I believe when people have my energy in their life is going to be amazing and you'll feel it. But when I'm gone, you're also going to feel it. It's a big lapse. So it's about, I think, self-value, which I'm still learning. I think it goes back to the imposter syndrome. I'm not afraid to admit it because I've got a lot to learn. But that intuition that's what it is to me.
Yeah, I think have respect in yourself.
Yes.
And I think other strategies that I've used in the past is what I call different cognitive lenses, so different ways of thinking about complexity, reality, certain decision sets. You can also do an opportunity cost analysis, and so personal circumstance for me is that if you sort of cast forward 5 years, would I be comfortable in retrospect of having made an escalating contribution to a failing course of action? And I think that Viktor Frankl put it more eloquently than I did about with some of his patients. Viktor Frankl was a leading advocate of logotherapy. He founded the school, and some advice that stuck with me when I first read Man's Search for Meaning in about 2016, where I was working with some veterans who were going through a really difficult time, was think that you're living your life for a second time and you're about to make the same mistakes as you did with the first. I think another way, and this is some advice from my mum, write down, if you can take complexity to a binary choice, get a bit of paper and put all of the reasons on the left for yes, or all the reasons on the right for no, or stay, go, whatever the decision is that you're trying to work through to help you be comfortable with the choice you've made and the consequences that will flow one way or the other. There's lots of different steps, but Look, it's something else I heard once from a dear friend of mine. His name's Chris. When I was faced with a binary choice about a decade ago, do I stay, do I go? Chris actually gave me some really good advice that, mate, there's actually a third choice between stay, go. There's reserve your choice until such time as you have the information to know. That was incredibly
So
valuable
wise.
advice from
Yes.
a great person. But, just do your best, keep a smile on your face and a skip in your step. It's life isn't easy, but back to Viktor Frankl, to live is to suffer. What's important to do is to find meaning in what you do. And that's, again, one of the reasons that it was a really easy choice to me to stand up for my values, my principles,
Incredible.
with the harm minimisation charity to combat anti-Semitism. And I'm looking at adapting, I'm looking at using my skills that have formed over a 30-year military career, including a bachelor, a couple of master's degrees, not only operational experience, but some incredible experiences in Australia and elsewhere, to build a foundation that starts in Australia but then scales globally. I've got a 20-year plan to bequeath to future generations
It's gonna be
a
incredible.
legacy, and that doesn't overwhelm me because I've faced difficult challenges in the past, and there's an
Yes.
exemplar in the Fulbright scholarship that I can look to guide binary decisions as I go. And I'm also, I think, in a position where just telegraphing to people that I can collaborate with, they understand that I'm not motivated by ego. I'm not looking at competing. It's a genuine desire to collaborate. And it's amazing how the mirroring effect with
Definitely.
with people work. What you give out is what you get back. And some of the
100%.
friendships that I've formed just in the last year, not only in Australia but across the whole planet, is extraordinary.
Yes.
And I'm thinking of a particular person by the name of Jorge, who I used to work with a number of years ago in the UN. I was given the great honour by Jorge to be one of his references for when he studied a master's at Duke. He's now back in his country of origin, and
Amazing.
he and a number of
Wow.
people that I've served with on the United Nations True Supervision Organisation that I'm still in contact with a number of years later may actually provide some of the architecture to scale the foundation globally, and it's something I'm
exciting.
really excited to be on the path of.
And Michael is going to actually have his movie coming out soon. He's looking, but book, documentary, movie. I'm manifesting it all for you. And I know we're laughing now, but we're going to watch this back in 20 years' time. I know these things are going to happen. I'm so excited.
Who are you casting as me?
We'll have to work that out. Whoever the actor is, you're going to have to work very hard for your job, because as you
Jim
can see,
Carrey
you've
or
got some
something?
competition. No, he's not going to cut it. I mean, sorry, Jim, you're awesome, but no. But on a question about business, let's get back to, so I'm in the branding space and digital space. And at the end of our podcast, which this section's probably going to be cut, but what is $1 million brand to you?
Gee, I think it's got to have a hook, and so it's got to get a person's attention. So that's the sizzle component, but then it's got to have a lot of stake and substance. And so, you are the $1 million brander.
Thank you.
You've not only had the confidence to come up at a friend's house on an unrelated function and say, are you that bloke that spoke in October 7 community event? Yes, it hit off a conversation and a friendship.
You were just so brilliant. The hardest thing is to speak on a stage or on camera, but more on a stage. And the way that you spoke was just so beautiful and engaging. And just thank you so much for being a voice for so many people who need it right now.
Thank you.
But
I think with your branding, you've not only had the confidence to walk through a door, but you've got a lot of substance, and so
thank you so much.
don't let anyone put you down.
Thank you so much.
Set high goals. Surround yourself with people that'll empower and enable, and that you can collaborate on to to achieve a shared vision. Certainly something that I'm keen on doing, and I've mentioned this ad nauseum to a number of people, is that what I aspire to is all rise like boats on
Love
the tide.
that quote. Yes.
Not zero-sum game, not me taking at someone else's
ego,
expense,
no.
but
Yes.
just looking at ways that people of goodwill can collaborate so that both are improved. And Jung, I think, spoke powerfully that when a couple of people come together, if there's a reaction, both are transformed.
Yes, an amazing synergy too. So I cannot wait to see what you do. I know you're going to get a lot done even in the net. Like, I feel like your 3 months is like other people's 3 years. So I'm very excited to see what you do and meet up with you in the States next year. We're going to do some more content, but it was such an honor and a privilege to have you on the $1 Million Branders podcast. And thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for your effort, for your leadership, thought leadership and vision to build a legacy in a world where it's so needed right now, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Justine. Together, we will prevail.
Absolutely.
Don't be so dramatic, not my demographic. This is demographic.